So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whichever part you're joining in. I welcome you all to the second session of the webinar series called For Test Automation Best Practices. So, we started this series with the sole purpose of democratizing test automation principles and best practices. We want to share uh, with through chats with industry veterans that how test automation should really be done, and hence we're doing this series, right? So in our previous session, we talked about we had in-house specialists, right? The people from the BrowserStack quality engineering team talking about automation best practices. And today we have Vinoth with me joining in from Teladoc Health, and we'll like to talk about test automation 0 to 1 and how you can start from nothing to accelerated testing, right? Test everything and each and everything under the sun. So, welcome, Vinoth. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thank you very much, Saurabh. And first of all, I would like to thank BrowserStack for having me here to share my experience in automation over my 15 years of journey. With that, I know some from different parts of the world and some in US, and I really appreciate your time in joining us. Thank you very much for that. And I'm Vinothkumar Veluswamy, working as an engineering manager in Teladoc Health, focusing on automation. I have over 15 years of experience extensively in automation framework development, building automation teams from scratch, of course, expanding the automation team. I'm leading the TCOE, which is nothing but Testing Center of Excellence. I have a good experience in vendor management, and of course, I'm a BrowserStack champion. I have certified innovation in healthcare and building a quality dashboard with RCA strategy. RCA, you guys know, is a root cause analysis strategy. I have a proven track record of designing well-established test strategies that contains both manual and automation testing that aligns to the project goals and significantly reduce time to market. Also, the better traceability metrics. Throughout my career, I have consistently demonstrated a good commitment to quality, innovation, and efficiency in software testing. And also my technical expertise goes to various domains such as mobile apps, web apps, performance, APIs, desktop apps, so and so. Very well experienced in handling multi-million-dollar projects with a high quality of standard outputs. And yeah, thank you so much. And that's all my high-level details on my intro part. And thanks, BrowserStack, for having me here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinoth, for the awesome introduction. And I think I don't know about all of you, but I hope to learn a thing or two from Vinoth today about test automation. So I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Saurav, and I am a product manager at BrowserStack. I've been here for a little more than 3 years now, mostly into building automation testing products. And I am building something cool right now, and I will share about that as well towards the end of the presentation today. Before BrowserStack, I used to actually write code for nuclear reactors, nuclear submarines, that kind of stuff, right? And I've switched over from there to being a product manager for test automation. So that's me. Now let's get started. Vinoth, I think some of the housekeeping items, like this is being recorded. The recording will be sent over to all of you after the session, and we will have dedicated Q&A towards the end of the session. Feel free to ask any of your questions using the Q&A panel in the Zoom webinar setting, right? So let's get started with the agenda, right? So today we are going to talk about, and please pardon me, I will be looking sideways because I have a second screen which I'm looking at. So we'll be talking about quality testing fundamentals, phases of test automation. We are starting from zero, right? And we'll walk you through all the stages of automation, the problems faced at each stages, and how Vinoth has been solving those problems. He'll be sharing those journeys with you, with all of us. And towards the end, I will be introducing something called observability for testing, which is a product that I have been building recently at BrowserStack, right? So let's get started with the first thing that I want to ask Vinoth, right? So Vinoth, what are the different levels of testing, and how do you really map them in the world of QA?
That's a good question, Saurabh. The one thing is, before I jump into that, since we start from 0 to 1, I would like to share in my experience in 15 years of journey. Of course, it's not always success or not always failure. It's like ups and downs, right? In the automation journey, you learn something, you make failures, and from there you understand something. So what I understood in automation industry is automation is not about automating everything. Automation is about automating the right thing, what your organization needs to expedite the release process and the deployment and make sure that you have covered the quality levels. So in that, there are different level of testings and the testing phases and so on. So I would imagine the testing phase will be like this, the testing pyramid, as you can see in the slide. This is a known concept, and this helped me a lot in making sure that we cover a lot of things in the right time and we speed up the automation. The first thing is unit testing. So there are two things in here. One is shift left approach and shift right approach. Both are really important. The shift left towards the developers and the shift right towards the QA, and the quality controls are come in the picture. So in the baseline, you have a unit testing and followed by API and contract testing or any other testing that you can fit in over there. And then the integration testing, UI, and the manual testing. As you can see, the manual testing is on the top because you do not want to spend too much of time in testing the repeated things again and again. And UI automation, of course, it's next to the manual testing. The reason for this is the execution time. So when you go from bottom up, the execution time always increase. So unit test takes less time than the other layers. So that's the meaning of this. And the test case also, the reduces, because if you have 10,000 test cases in unit testing, you don't need to have same 10,000 test cases in your UI automation. You should be reducing the number of test cases so that you speed up your process. And each and every phase will have a quality gate. So when I say quality gate, it's like an entrance to your entry ticket to your next level. So if you reach a benchmark, then obviously you go to the next phase. It's like a video game. So unit testing, if you're 80% covered or 90% covered, then it goes to the next level of testing. So these things comes under the CI/CD pipeline, and that's again a different concept. But this is generally what I would focus, and I focused. And right now, the very good structure this pyramid is actually helping us a lot. So that's all about different level of testing, and this is how we map in quality assurance work. This is all through my experience that I learned.
Right. But if I were to ask you, what are the phases of automation? Like you mentioned that there's a pyramid, right? How do you really navigate through these phases? Like, where do you start and how do you proceed?
First of all, you need to understand where you stand, right? So for that, you need to know what is your goal of automation. So you need to sit with your organization and understand where exactly you need automation, where exactly you need to focus primarily, because not every organization is a big organization, right? Some are startup companies, some are mid-level, some are CMM level 5, high-level companies. So every organization has a different approach to the automation. So first you need to understand why, who, what. These are the type of questions that you can answer to understand the goals. For example, who are your stakeholders? What problem that you are trying to solve? Do you have a sufficient infrastructure or a skill set to solve that problem, or you have a budgeting? What is your current testing strategy or any automation thing that you are missing? Because when you talk about organization wants, let's say, 20% of automation in all the products, but some of the products may have already started the automation. Some projects may have zero automation. Some projects have mature automation skills. So you cannot apply same strategy for all the other projects. So you need to know what projects needs more attention in what area. Based on that, you can proceed. So that is about your understanding of goals. The next phase is, once you understand your goal, you need to know how to implement that technically. So that comes under with architecture and framework. Again, that's a very big thing. You need to understand the pros and cons and so and so. And test case selection, what type of test cases that your organization is really required, because some of the organization is straightforward, like they want to just have one screens, and multiple products have multiple screens. So combination of different products and something, that a lot of complex test cases. So you need to understand your test case selections too. And once you select the test case, you need to know what type of data that you can feed in order to proceed further. So test data management is something that's really important. For that, you need to understand what is your DB structure is, how effectively you can work on. because every time you automate, you feed some data into the database and then you retrieve the data. So the more number of data you feed into it, the more the application takes some time to, so the DB performance issue also come into the picture. So you need to know whether we have a good infrastructure or not. And of course, you need to verify your framework too. So your framework should map the objectives. So that is my first point, mapping to objectives. And rest of the things like integration to other available testing tools. Like, for example, if you have test management tools like Jira, Test Rails, Pira, whatever it is, you should know whether it is possible to integrate such tools in your automation or not. If yes, you need to know how you can integrate, how effectively you can communicate with the stakeholders. Main thing is you need to reduce the manual time analysis. So this is something that we focus on during our architecture. And of course, framework is not individual. You need to involve development team as well as manual team to understand their feedback, because it's not like a one-man army that you go and straight away start working on it. So it involves a lot. And of course, this is not only the type of testing. You can include any type of, you can apply to load, volume, stress, APIs. So everything falls under this automation. This is a general opinion about test automation. And of course, you need to have implementation and then training. You need to know whether the skill sets are enough or not. And execution is really important. Once you understand the problem and once you implement, your test case should not execute for 24 hours, right? One test case and one job, it take 24 hours. There's no need for the 24 hours. You need to optimize how effectively you can use your automation to speed up. The last is the reporting. Whatever you do, finally, it's how you sell to the market. So now the market is your stakeholders. So how you sell? Through reporting. If your reporting talks about what is the automation goals are, what is that the product expectation is, are we satisfying all these in the metrics, then that's it. So you achieve your goal by going back and forth with the feedbacks and implementation, refactoring, so on. So this is not like one-time effort. It is like multi-level effort at every time, because it goes through iterations. Your goals changes, your automation framework change to wrap the goal. Now AI and ML come into the picture. You can also involve AI and ML into the automation framework. So these are the phases of framework. Apart from this, there are a lot, but these are the major things that I came across through my experience. And yeah, that's it. That's all, Saurabh. Yeah.
Wow, I think that seems to me like a toolkit. You just gave away a toolkit that anyone can just implement in their organization and just put in the variables and get the output out of it, right? So
Right.
interesting. So moving on, right? Just a moment. Sorry. Okay. Now we talked about the phases of automation and how you get there. But a very important step in that journey is about choosing the right automation tool. Maybe if you're starting a greenfield project, how would you choose the right automation tool based on your need? What are your thoughts on that?
Cool. So let's imagine that you know what is the problem is and what you're trying to solve, and you understand the stakeholders and you understand the reporting structures and everything. Now you need to find the tool. Which tool I need to use? Well, you have open source, you have paid source and paid tool, everything. So I would say in my experience, not one tool fits for everything. So you need to have some sort of a negotiation or the compromise between A and B. And so the first thing you need to understand is the pros and cons of the tool. Any tool you take, it has own pros and it has own cons, right? So you come up with, you take one tool, have pros and cons. You take the second tool, similarly, you have pros and cons. Finally, you merge everything and see which tool actually have more number of points in pros compared to cons. And not only that, it doesn't mean that whatever the pros are high, so you just go for a no. You need to understand whether that particular tool will actually satisfy your needs. So it's like a kind of a budgeting, the way how you construct your house, you first analyze and the land soil test and so on and so you have to come up with that. I also had this type of dilemma during my initial days when trying to take out the tools, because everybody thinks that what the tool they are using is the best tool. So you need to understand and you need to try to convince and you need to come up with the metrics to say, okay, this is the tool that we think it is common when we put it in the organization level. So that is something that you need to take care in the pros and cons. And also the return on investment on developing your automation strategy. So once you understand the problem, once you select the tool, Once you start implementing, that is when you find the ups and downs, right? So during implementation, you maybe end up saying that, okay, I think this is not supported in this tool. I think we need to find an alternative approach. So when you say an alternative approach, your skill sets are you should have proper resources in it. So those things should be always considered first. What if I cannot do this? Is there any way that I can find an alternative solution for this or that? So that type of an approach you need to take. And if you find an alternative solution, always budgeting comes into the picture. You have enough resource? If yes, go for it. Budgeting. Think automation is like a development process. It isn't just not like you take a tool and just put it in and it does the magic. No, it does not. You need to think in all the perspective. Development should be your focus. I would say automation is nothing but a development. It's just the name automation, but still you're going with the development. So when I say development, obviously you come up with the programming language, what you want to use it. For example, let's say I have a team of, let's say 20 members. And out of 20 members, let's say 15 members knows Python when compared to Java. And if I want to develop, so what I can do is I'll just work with my team, understand what language they are more proficient in it. And without having any extra budget, I can use the 15 members who knows Python when compared to five members which know Javas. At the same time, your tools should support your Java and Python languages. Obviously, now I believe most of the tools that come up with the different options like a Java, Ruby, and then all sort of C#, so everything. So obviously you have a choice to make over there. So that is the right programming language, and depends upon the platform also. For example, let's say if your product supports only desktop, and there is no way that you can see your product supports on different platforms like a mobile or the Apple Watch or any sort of things, then you need to understand, is it okay if I just start with only the browser supported platform, or should I just think about the future of implementation regarding the mobile development? Because the frameworks are a little bit different. Selenium for web browser, for example, APM for mobile. So you have different frameworks. So you should think about that. So for that, you need to sit and understand. And even if you take any tool, you should know whether that supports a mobile integration in future, something like that. So those things are you need to come up with. And some of the framework that I put in here is a robot framework, Playwright, and APM. This is known by everyone. So obviously that's something that you can, and also integration capacity with other tests. Sometimes you need to work complex test cases. Sometimes you need to interact with the DB. Sometimes you need to interact with the APIs. So your framework is nothing but your tools and extra packages, wrapper classes, and so on. So all these should support your goal. And the report generation, as I told you, you can do anything, but if you're not selling it, it won't be fit for your journey. So obviously you need to understand how reporting comes into the picture, and localization and accessibility. I feel this is very important to touch up, and that's why I put it over the point. So you can also think about how you integrate localization and accessibility. At last, runtime checkup. This is where everything you need to focus on. So those parts combined together for your selecting your right tool and the development effort. Again, this is on my experience. You can come up with a lot of other thoughts and parameters also. So these are the major points that I feel that is more important when compared to others. Others can also support your points, but these are the major things that you cannot avoid. So this is how you select the right tool and the development. Yes.
Right. I think we now have another toolkit. So today's the day for toolkits. So moving on, I think, okay. So we now know that, okay, how to select the right framework as well. But how about going on planning for anything new that you're doing? Let's say you will need to assemble a team. How many people do you need? And many more things, right? There's a lot of planning that goes into any new project. How do you go about planning, and have you developed anything unique that will solve the planning problem?
I was expecting that question. Yeah, thank you very much again for that question. It's a good question too. Now, as I said initially, imagine you have now systems, everything in place. You have automation scripts in place. Now you need to know how to execute, right? For any execution, you need, what do you need? Basically, you need numbers, right? What numbers? Since you are doing in some sort of QA work, always test case and other things comes into the picture. Yes, we do have some unique business over there. So that contains like the test case metrics, automation states, and resource allocation, timelines, and metrics in sprint, and all sort of things. So basically, think any dashboard which helps you to understand which project needs more time, which project is high priority project, which project that the stakeholders are very much important to analyze the report. For example, let's say everybody knows that past 2 years and still now the COVID things are continuing, and all of a sudden the remote comes into the picture. Mostly in the meetings, we used to start the Zoom and other sort of remote teams working platforms. But all of a sudden, when we say everybody is remote, everyone start using Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever the platforms that they are in. Look at the power of technology. The technology shifts, right? So performance comes into the picture. So people should know, okay, if I start using it, all of a sudden across the world, if they start using this platform, am I able to survive? My servers handle all those things. So those things are the numbers that I am talking about. So these are the things that the stakeholders are more important. So for that, what you have to do is the use case. The use case priority wise, you need to take about the use case. Most of the test cases are redundant, and the manual testing team keep on doing that. So those type of test cases that you can automate first. So those parts comes in the dashboard. Automation states are really, really important, because you should have a discussion with the QA team. It is not that you should not have, but you should not keep going and asking. So everybody should have some sort of a common platform where they can understand what numbers are there. So if I take a project, that project should tell me how many manual test cases are there, how many test cases are automated, what are the in-progress tasks, how many resources are working on different projects, and how many skill sets are there, what type of platforms, everything. So think about one board which contains all these data, so that you don't need to worry about asking the data from different members. So of course, that board should have a resource allocation also. In that resource allocation, you can talk about, I'm giving a simple example. Let's say a manual team member start executing a test case, and per day 50 test cases he can execute. For example, it may be less or more, but I'm just giving an average example. Sometimes it is more, but you cannot expect the same for an automation engineer to develop 50 test cases in a day, right? It has some sort of technical implementation. It takes time, it takes understanding of coding, debugging, and everything comes into the picture. So you need to understand how much effort that it involves. So these are the things that you need to understand, and whether you can automate it in sprint or in quarter, how much time you need, or in 3 months down the line or 4 months down the line, how much test cases you can automate, what benefit that is going to give. Say, suppose I automate 100 test cases, and that 100 test cases replaces the smoke entirely. So you don't need to spend the time on manually executing the smoke test cases. So it saves some time, right? Per day, 50 test cases for one QA member. In just 1 hour, the automation test case can complete. So this is the effort. This is the time that you help your team members, your manual team members, your dev, and the company to save. So the ROI comes into the picture. And metrics, always I talk about the metrics, because without metrics, if you don't know how to measure your implementation or your productivity, I don't think there is a room for any improvements. So if you know how to measure, there is a room for improvement, and you can keep up with the technology. So any dashboard, what I say is, should have the majority of these things. And of course, you can have multiple things, but these are the major things that you cannot avoid. Yeah, that's all, sir. Over to you.
Got it. And I think Vinoth, and for everyone, right? Vinoth has actually built a proprietary tool, which he cannot show for obvious reasons. It's proprietary, but it's so cool that it can do everything in minutes. So I'm assuming that if not everyone would have a tool like that to do all the planning for them. But in absence of that, how do people do this? Do they do like in Google Sheets, or like if someone has to actually do some planning? I'm assuming they would be using some sheets or something like that. Is that correct, Vinoth?
Yeah, I mean, initially we started with, as I said, I learned through my 15 years of journey. Initially, I started with an Excel sheet and came up with a formula, Google, and copy paste the BB scripts and so on, so. But it helps to a certain extent. Of course, if you are handling one project and a small team, that is fine. I won't say that is the bad approach. I would say that is kind of a limitation that you're coming up with. But if you just imagine you're running a company, and your company has 100 different projects, at least 10 members in each project. So you need to manage 1,000 resources, right? So think about that. So if you grow, your small portions will not be sufficient. So you need to think extra from the sheet. That is where I started coming up with, of course, I cannot discuss, but I started coming up with an approaches, collected the data, and yes, that's something that is cool. Yeah.
Got it. Now, moving on, I think since we're talking about testing and we have talked so much about testing already, one question that always comes up, right? Whenever any new project is starting, or from time to time it comes up, right? How important is a cloud testing partner to help in testing or scaling of testing, rather, right? Without compromising on quality, obviously. So, what are your thoughts on that part?
So before jumping into cloud partnership, let me explain my experience on this. So when I started, it's through my experience. I'm not talking about particular company or project or anything. When I started, it's like a small member team, and we have set up test cases. We started running, setting up Selenium Grid. I think people in the automation industry, they know what a Selenium Grid is all about, and just want to give a highlight. It's kind of a client and server things. It will route the commands to different systems. So you set up a Selenium Grid, it handles and sort of rerouting the commands to the respective browsers. It went with that approach. Once we have like, for example, like 100 test cases, it works fine. 200 test cases, I was like, oh no, I think we need one more machine. So we started with setting up a second Selenium Grid. And when it comes up with 300 test cases, so that the test case grows, your expectation grow, right? And of course, you need to speed up. So it's not like you have 100,000 test cases. The 1,000 test cases can run in one day. No, it's not something that automation member can feel about. So we thought about that, and we were like, okay, what if we want to scale? So we understand that scaling is important. We started scaling on our own, and we have some maintenance limitations, and we need resources, and we need to spend more budget on it. So we were thinking about what is the approach that we need to go for. Again, as I said, it's not that everything you do it in the first, it will be the right choice, right? You will learn some things on the fly. It's not like everything you planned, it goes perfectly. Of course, I wish it could go perfectly, but not always, right? So when you come up with this, as I informed already, you need to find an alternative approach, and also you need to know how much budget it will take. So that's where we jump into cloud testing partners. And we understand their services, and we try to map their services to our organization goal. And we thought, okay, yes, this is something that we can start up with, and we start up. And yeah, now we have at least a good amount of test cases, like more number of test cases, high quality, and we scaled up. And in the mobile platform too, I'm talking about the real devices platform as well, and also the browser side. So that's kind of interesting. That's where I was jumping into the cloud platform, and of course it helped me in scaling a large amount of test cases. Yes.
Got it. So I think BrowserStack also, like, I'm sure every one of you know already that BrowserStack is one such cloud testing solution, which provides browsers on the cloud, real devices on the cloud for any kind of your testing need. You need not create your own Selenium grids or Appium grids or buy those all mobile phones and create a device lab. None of that would be needed with BrowserStack and a whole lot of other products, right? So, which brings me to my next question, which is not to you, Vinoth, which is to the entire audience. Would you like to explore BrowserStack test automation products? There will be a poll that will show up on your screens right now. If you want to explore BrowserStack products, just answer yes. One of our team members will reach out to you to get your requirements and suggest you the right solution and help you scale, right? That's kind of our motto. We want to help everyone who wants to take quality seriously. So we'll give a few seconds and then we'll move on to the next segment, right? Cool. I think moving on. How crucial do you think is it to measure the return on investment? So you would have some allocated bandwidth, right? Maybe 10 member, 20 member, 30 member team. And I know it for a fact that every time it's a tussle between I need more people, I need more this, I need more that. So how important do you think is it to measure the ROI of your entire testing strategy, and how are you providing value to your organization?
That's a very good question, and it's a complex question too, because it depends upon the budget, and it depends upon you should not compromise the quality. At the same time, you should utilize the given budget. You should not overrun the budget too, and if you overrun, you should have proper metrics for the overrun too. So those things, as I mentioned, those are the things that you can consider before actually started working on that. That comes under selecting the right tool and the ROI part. So now I have complete automation. For example, I have complete automation, stakeholders are happy and so on. So the happiness does not give me anything unless and until I prove that my automation saves something from the budget allocated over there, right? So that is where return on investment metrics. There are a lot of things comes into the picture, but I personally feel through my experience, these are the major things that, again, you cannot avoid without this. You can add more on top of this, but these are the major things that I could say is very, very important. One is time and effort. Depends on the testing time and the time that you save for the release project. For example, if your regression cycle takes, like, for example, 1 week, okay, and if you automated like 1,000 test cases, and 1,000 test cases take 1 week to deploy, and if your 1,000 test cases execute in 4 to 5 hours, example only 4 to 5 hours, so obviously you're saving the rest of the time, right? At the same time, to automate 1,000 test cases, you should not take 3 years or 4 years. Then it is of no use. So you need to know how to balance these things, development as well as your saving. So this goes hand in hand. It's not like one goes other way, one goes another. Both should go hand in hand. Only then you will find some savings in the time and effort wise. Rest of things is the test coverage. If you run your automation, obviously the manual testing team have their own automation, have their own test cases. They give to the automation team members. So when they execute, they'll find out some other defects apart from the execution test cases, right? So where that defect comes in and how we missed from the automation. So those things you can identify easily. So if you find that gap, you could save some sort of a development effort, because I heard fixing a bug costs 1.5 times more than the developing the feature. So because you need to go back to the same strategy again, like you need to start fixing it, communication, deploy, test, deploy, and then release. So it takes some time. So fixing costs more compared to the development. That's what I heard, and I could see that through my experience. So you need to understand that too. And the defect density and the defect age, obviously, by the words you can understand that how long the defect has been in the system, whether it is really important to keep that defect in place in the system, or we have to go in a different way, how we want to measure. So that sort of things that you need to say. But again, as I said, once you automate, it is not that I automated, I just left it. No, you should keep retrospect. You should understand whether it is really helping or not helping. If you think that your automation test cases are running, but nobody is interested, then you should ask yourself a question. Okay, I'm running, you're not interested. Any reason? Is it like the product want to deprecate this? If it is deprecating in down 1 month or 2 months, you need to understand whether it is the right time for you to fix the automation script and keep running, or is it right time for you to add more test cases on it, or what is that? So those are the things that you need to, it's like a development effort, continuous iterations, continuous retrospect. Only then you will understand what type of investment that you are getting back after investing so and so millions of dollars over there. The fourth thing is the budgeting. Everywhere it comes with the budget. It's not, nothing is free. Everywhere it's budget. So infrastructure budgeting and resource allocation is something that you need to calculate. You need to understand, okay, I spent 300K in automation, building an automation for 6 months, and I save 100K every month over the down future. So your breakdown point in next to 3 months after you deliver, you get the benefit of getting 100K every month. You're saving cost of 100K every month. So that is how you need to calculate. So once you complete your automation, all of a sudden the next moment you won't get any benefit. On the down the line, it's like a slow ups. So you should see the upward trend, not like a downward trend. So you need to understand that. Again, development cost is really important. As I mentioned, the effort or the cost. Test execution environment stability. Some teams have local environment setup where they want to create their own environment and deploy there, and then kind of testing over there. So your testing depends on that environment. You need to make sure that your environment is stable. Otherwise, you spend a lot of time in maintaining the environment, which means that though you have less number of budget in automation, but more number of budget in maintenance. So you feel like you're getting a return on investment in automation, but at the same time, you put that savings money in the maintenance. So it is like common sense. There is no much return on investment. So you need to understand that. So you need to focus not on the straight path, you need a broader mindset. Keep yourself open, understand what is impacting your investment, and from there you come up with an approach. The final thing is automation stability. That's what I say, execution pass and fail rate. If your test case, of course, as a manager, I want to know how many test cases are passed over the past 2 sprints or 3 sprints, or at least I can still ask for, like, for 6 months, how many test cases I keep passing? Is there any the flaky failures, or is there anything that I need to work on? Is there anything that I need to put my attention immediately, or taking out something? And is there any changes? As I mentioned, your application is not static application. It's like keep changing as the use case changes. It's keep changing. So once there is a break in an application, your automation breaks. So you need to find a time to fix it. So you can even think about a strategy which helps you to resolve this problem in prior to get it failures. So you can come up with an approach like talking to the QA team, obviously, and that is where the automation states come into the picture. If there is anything that you foresee that this application breaks and this use case changes, the manual testing team go and update the test case, and they make the changes to change request. So once you know what is change request, obviously you get the intimation, and you change your automation script accordingly. So you see how it's like a precaution that you are taking it in advance to solve the problem prior to the deployment. So it is like it's kind of an insurance that you are putting in on your life insurance. So something before comes happens. So it's the same as that. So these are the major things that I would calculate for ROI. And if I have a sufficient numbers in this, then based on the number, the delta value, I would call it a delta value. If your delta value is higher, which means that your rate of investment, return on investment is higher, then obviously you're giving a benefit. Automation is all about how effective you are running, how fast you are running, how much money you're saving from spending on the budget. So that's how the automation. These are the major points you could not avoid, but there are a lot of other points also. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to discuss a lot of other points too, but these are the major points you cannot avoid. Yeah.
Right. I think ROI for automation, I think you pretty much explained all of it, right? Like how would someone justify that why I should be automating and not sitting idle, right? Okay. Moving on, I think we'll be moving on towards a different kind of segment. And towards that, I would want to ask you, Vinoth, how do you really handle like test failures? Now that you've automated, we have been through the journey last 40 minutes. You've automated your tests. There are a bunch of tests that are running and bunch of results that are getting generated. How do you handle failures? I'm sure there would be genuine and non-genuine failures, and
Right.
there would be a lot of trends, metrics, analytics. A lot of that would be needed for you to keep yourself sane, right? Otherwise, you'll go mad, like looking at so many results every day. How do you do that?
Right. That's a good question again, and of course, it's a complex question. You need to understand why the applications keep failing, or it's left flaky or something. Yes. Initially, if you have only 100 test cases, it's easy. You just go through that test cases. You don't need to worry. Then again, starts with 200, 300. And if you have 10,000 test cases, which covers all sort of projects and give a best quality that you can ever do that to the product, so then the actual complexity comes into the picture. The more that you grow, the more the complexities. So again, it comes under the QA dashboards. So you need to collect a lot of metrics around your failure test cases, understand why it is failing. If it is like a flaky test cases, again, flaky test cases may be an application issue, like a race condition you end up with. that needs to be analyzed. That is part one. The part two is it is trying to communicate with some of the services in the network, but that services is not up and running because you're not testing in the production, right? Of course, automation can run in the production, but mostly automation, you run it in the pre-pod, meaning the staging environment or dev environment, something to have some sort of testing, right? So those may not be exactly equal to production environment. So a production environment, you have, let's say, hundreds of servers. So it is not necessary for you to have hundreds of servers in the testing environment. So again, budgeting constraints comes into the picture. It depends upon number of users also. So those are the points that we need to take. And of course, it was challenging for us, and we built a system which helps us to understand how many test cases failed over the past 2 sprints, 3 sprints, over the quarter, or even for 6 months down the line. So we have those type of metrics has come into the picture, and the definition of flaky test cases differs from project to project. So there's no proper definition. So you can just check with your product team saying that, okay, this I find like in past 2 sprints, it was working fine, and this sprint it got break. And I executed one more time, it got passed, but there is no application changes. Do you think any problems in this? That's where I said the category number 1, the application race condition. So those type of test cases, you can take it. I won't recommend of taking it out just like that without having a discussion and understanding the impact of taking it out. But still, you don't need to run the flaky test cases every time. If it is flaky, you can keep it segregated with a separate category and run that when it is needed, because you spend analysis and things. Sometimes it's not possible at all to do that flakiness fix. So what you do is you put that test cases for some other category. That's why this pyramid comes into the picture. You can try to see whether the test case fits in the unit testing category or API category or some sort of things that you need to test it. So you can put it into that level. So yeah, that's how I just go. It's a collection of metrics basically. You need to understand regression and the smoke and nightly bills and a lot of other things. So you need to have a proper metrics and the trend analysis and so on. So it's not simple. But it is useful, and it should every member should know this is very, very important. And as a manager, this is very, very important for me. Yes.
Got it. I think now I would ask the same question to every one of you. How do you have automation tests? Now, how do you do this test reporting, debugging, analytics? How do you go about analyzing the reports and understanding what's a genuine failure versus what's not, right? So you would see a poll question on your screens with 2 options, right? Like, do you use open source reporters like Allure, or maybe the framework's default reporter, or the CI tool? Maybe there are reports in Jenkins, Circle CI, and all of that, right? Or do you have custom tooling like some that Vinoth has, or is it like a test management solution that you use for test debugging as well, right? Or is it like you're using some other kinds of third-party tools? I'll spend a few seconds here, and then we'll move on. This answer is for us to understand what you do today, and to be able to create better products and help the entire testing community. I think that's the motivation behind this question. Right. So moving on, we want to talk about something called automated test run verification. So Vinoth has helped us understand how you go about in your automation journey, create thousands of test cases, you run them, but how do you go about verifying them? And what are the problems and challenges in automated test run verification? I will talk about those problems and also show you how it can be a cakewalk using something that we have been building, right? So like Vinoth has also been saying, right? You run automated tests multiple times a day, and you are ending up with more and more test results to verify. So there would be a lot of failures. You would have to go and check whether this is a genuine failure, not genuine failure. What is the root cause of that failure? And hence what's happening is really, as the automation scales up, you either have to hire more people to do test run, because you cannot do away with test run verification. You have to do it. Otherwise, you cannot deploy to production. Or you overload your existing team. So your team will be doing this only and not be writing new automation scenarios. So it's either of the two. on your left, what you see is basically all the problems with automated test run verification that exist today. Identifying what is a genuine test failure, that's the biggest problem, right? You don't know. You sometimes, and most of the times, you have to rely on your memory. Was this flaky? Did it fail yesterday as well? You always keep on guessing, and you're like, this is passing, this is 98% passing rate or 95% passing rate. Am I confident enough to let this PR pass? It's all a guesswork. And many of the times what happens is a bug will slip through. A bug will slip through that guesswork. A bug will slip through a flaky test. And then you have to do RCA. Why did the bug slip through? Why did production go down? And all of that, right? We have all been there. So what's really causing the problem are the things on the right. So manually and repeatedly separating faults from real failures, going to different systems, getting logs from your Jenkins, getting logs from different sources to understand why it actually failed, rerunning the test locally on your laptop to going and inspecting the browser. Is it a real failure? Why is it failing? So it's not only time taking, it's also frustrating. If you're doing the same thing every day, it's actually costing you money because you're spending time. Time is money. It's also causing a lot of frustration, developer frustration, which we, as a developer community, we have been talking more and more about developer frustration. And I think it's time now that we acknowledge that there is a huge developer frustration lying in the quality engineering domain, that people end up doing repeated stuff every day and not doing the thing that they have been hired to do, basically write new automation scenarios. Industry leaders like Slack and Trivago, like what they have been saying, they have been writing blogs about the flakiness problem in test cases, right? Defect creep in production is real. Reliability of test cases going down is real, and these are real problems. We have seen users, customers who have stability as low as 50% for their UI test. So if you are down to 50% of test stability, how do you even know what you're doing, right? So you are under a false pretense that I have 1,000 test cases. Really, you don't have 1,000 because you have 50% of them are flaky, always failing on whatnot, right? So, and it also leads to longer cycle times. Every day you're spending those times to verify things before you can actually give them a thumbs up, right? So if you do a simple math, right, and this is data from actual users we have been talking to, even mid-sized teams like 20 engineer teams, even they end up spending somewhere between 1 hour to 3 hours every single day doing test run verification activity. And that quickly adds up to engineering hours, dollars, right? And you can't escape this. This is a real problem. What we are saying is, a decade back, there were companies that came up in the industry like Datadog, Splunk, New Relic, Dynatrace. They introduced the concept called observability for your production systems. So if something goes down in production, these tools will tell you actually what went down, and they will help you solve that problem in production. What I am saying, what we are saying is, like your application needs observability, your test cases also need observability so that you can quickly identify the issues in the test cases, in the testing in general, and actually fix those issues, right? And when we looked around, so we identified that this is a problem. Is there anyone solving this problem? Is there any tool that solves all these problems holistically? No. There is not even a single tool that solves all of these problems all at one place, right? And that is the reason why we built BrowserStack Test Observability. So I think I will be showing you a quick demo of how this tool looks like. So this is a very demo sandbox account, observabilitydemo.browser.com. So anyone can go and access this. And in a few minutes, I think you will also have this link on the chat. You can also go and explore. You don't have to sign up. No sign up needed. You just go and play around with it, right? So what do we have here? This is a dashboard, and this is created in less than 5 minutes of your effort, right? You don't have to do any long drawn integration. We have SDKs for different frameworks. You integrate the SDK, it will take you like maybe 4 or 5 lines of code change, 5 minutes of your effort, and you're set. You do that change in your pipeline, and results will start flowing into test observability. What you will see is what I'll walk you through, and no more effort needed to get started with this tool, right? So we are calculating flakiness automatically. You can actually see trends of flakiness over huge amounts of time, right? Up to 2 years of data we are storing, right? You can also take a glimpse of all the latest unique runs. What is the happening with the latest smoke run, sanity run, regression run for every project? This is just one project you're looking at. You can have hundreds of projects, all data consolidated in one place. Unit tests, functional tests, API tests, every kind of test, every kind of report, everything at one place for your entire organization, right? Stability trends, performance trends. We are automatically categorizing failure analysis. Basically, we're doing we have machine learning based algorithms which are able to actually categorize the reason of your failure. So you don't even have to debug the root cause of failures. You just have to do it once, and the system learns and automatically tags the failures. We automatically detect new failures. A high number of new failures could mean that your dev quality is poor, basically. They are sending PRs and then those PRs are randomly breaking a huge amount of your test, right? So all of these metrics mean something. And this can be very, very important for you to make your case. Like what Vinoth was saying, right? The ROI. The ROI is always important. And you need metrics, you need data to prove a point. And test observability will give you all the data that you need to make a case for improving the health of automation, identifying the actual places that need help, right? Each of these data points are drill downable. You can actually go and drill down what are all these always failing tests, the growth in the number of unique test cases. Are you even writing new test cases? So you can actually track that as a manager, as a senior senior director or director of quality. This would be a place to actually know what is the truth. This is the source of truth, right? How frequently are you running? How many tests are you running? It can also tell you about the scale of testing operations that you're doing. What is your device browser coverage and all of that, right? But this is for managers. This is for leaders. This is not where the engineer will spend their time. And before I started, I said that I'm going to show you a product that is going to solve debugging time, that is going to solve the time for run verification. This is not what will solve. What will solve is actually this. Every every day in the morning when a quality engineer comes to office, they will see this. Okay, last night I ran regression. There were so many failures. So many are always failing. So many are new failures and performance anomalies and whatnot. Right? They can go inside. So these are the statistics or rather insights getting created from that one single run, regression run or sanity run or whatever run. Right? Automatically we are detecting new failures. So you have so many failures. You have 200 failures, but only eight of them are new failures. So you can actually bypass everything else. All of the other things is noise, basically, either a flaky test or a always failing test or something else, right? You can only focus on the new failures, and these are the ones that this is how you can save time, right? You don't have to debug all of those failures. We're automatically detecting unique errors as well, and this is through uh, unsupervised machine learning algorithms, which is this clustering algorithms, basically. It's able to actually cluster into different buckets of error. And it can tell you that, okay, this is one single call for 70 of your test cases failing. You can actually see what all are the test cases. All these test cases have failed because of this single cause. And you can debug the actual execution from here itself. You can actually see the video, the logs, everything that the test case can ever generate, all the different kinds of logs, screenshots, errors. And when I say everything, it's everything. Logs from terminal, framework commands, device logs, network logs, console logs, even your backend application logs. So all kinds of logs, all organized in one coherent timeline for you to make sense of the data. If something failed, and just before it failing, there is a network error, there is a console error, you know that, okay, that failure is because of that network error and nothing else, right? You can do your analysis right here. And you can also segregate the entire report by folders. So you don't have to. So let's say you have 1,000 test cases. One single engineer will never be looking at 1,000 test cases, right? You won't have bifurcation. You can use the folders structure that we're automatically categorizing to understand, okay, I am responsible for this folder or this module rather. And let me go and take a look at this module only. And I can do that from here itself, right? I can apply that as a filter and I will see the report. This is the entire test report of all the tests that has been running from this folder, right? The report is also there for you to debug everything, right? And we automatically have ability to comment. You can actually collaborate from here itself. You can read on test cases, create Jira tickets and whatnot, right? You can also mute or silence test cases which are not important to you right now, and you'd like to fix them back, right? You can do all of your debugging right here and achieve blazing fast test run verification, right? You don't have to go through everything. For example, this is a product bug. It was auto analyzed, right? You don't even have to go inside and see what's happening. You know that this is a certain kind of a failure, right? You can also use this product to understand the overall health of your automation. And what is your average failure rates like? What are the top test cases that need attention? Like, for example, these ones. These have been failing every single time. For example, this one, 56% failure rate. You can go and take a look inside. So you see all the executions of that test case. So imagine this is a flaky test case and it was green. It was green, 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 and suddenly it started becoming red. So you can actually pinpoint where the problem started. You can go deeper and actually debug from there as well, right? So that's the power of observability, that you can actually debug from any place you want. You can go back in time and also debug, right? We store data up to 2 years, right? And needless to say, we also have unique error analysis. So you know that what are the top unique errors, and you have only 17. So if you solve 17 problems, you sort it for your life, right? So that's the power of test observability, through which you can actually speed up your entire debugging process, save a lot of time, and use that time to actually solve the critical problems in your automation or write more test cases so that your overall product quality goes up, right? So having said that, let me go back to the deck. And I would like to ask you, every one of you, that whether you would like to explore test observability for your organization. So a poll question would come up on your screens. And if you'd like to explore, one of our team members will get in touch with you. And this is a very new product. So I am the product manager. We have been building this for a little over 10 months now. It's a small team of 5-6 engineers building this product, curated by 7-8 people, right? Not more than that. And we are very close to it. And if you choose to start with it, you will directly be in touch with me, if you face any problems, and I will be helping you solve all of them and all of that, right? So go ahead and answer the poll question, and we can move on from here. I think the next thing we have is Q&A. So yes, let's take up some questions, and before we wrap up the conversation, right? So Jaspreet has a question. How do automation test plans differ from generic test plans or test strategies, document-wise? Beneficial if you can share some sample automation test plan documents. I'm not sure whether we can share any document, but Vinoth, would you like to take a stab at answering that? Like,
Sure. Sure. So basically, test strategy, it's like your blueprint. And test planning, it's like your another blueprint for your project. Example, I put a test strategy across the company. Like every test plan should have exit and entry criteria, resource allocations, budgeting, and infrastructures. All these things should be categorized, and these are the points that you need to capture as a part of your test plans. So test strategy is at like the whole level. It's like a entire architecture. This is how it's like a guidelines for your test planning. And test plan, as you said, some of the if you're a backend developer or a tester, you need to understand what tools can be used and what is the entry and exit criteria for your DB testing. And if it is your API and similar, it falls on API. So I would say test strategy, it's at the high level, and test plan, it's at the project level, how you execute and what are the regression test cases that you need to come up with and what test cases can be covered. So those are, and of course, I don't have a document. Probably you can Google. There's a lot of sample documents available. So yeah, that's all about that questions.
Thank you, Vinoth. The next one is from Riju John. I think my automation team is finding difficult to integrate a CI/CD process. We are using WDIO framework to automate scripts. Do you have any inputs on how to tackle this situation? Would you like to take it?
Well, I'm not much aware about this WTIO framework. Maybe I need to look into it.
I think I can take that then. I can take that in that case, right? So Riju, I think any framework you use for automation, right? Immaterial of that, you would be writing tests, you would be running them, you would be generating reports. But if you want to integrate a CI/CD process, what would happen is, if even if there is one single failure, the CI job will be failing. The Jenkins job or whichever CI job, right? The job will fail. So you cannot really deploy instead of, rather than without adding a quality gate in place, right? So either you can actually have some process built internally to understand that, okay, I have 100 tests. If 90 of them are passing, then I should go and hit that Jenkins API for marking it as quality gate pass. Or you have to do it manually. You cannot do a CD. You can do a CI. You can always run tests whenever your PR is created or whatever, right? So job will run, it will give you result, but it cannot be CD if there are failures. So you'll have to introduce a manual step or integrate a quality gate process. And as a matter of fact, I didn't talk about it, but test observability, the product that we've built, we are introducing a quality gate functionality. So using that, you will be actually able to actually go and influence the quality gate status of a CI from the configuration of quality gate that you do within the test observability tool. I hope that answers the question. Moving on. Okay, this is from William, and the question is, who should be implied in the test cases selection? Only automation engineer or someone else? Yeah.
Yes. So the test case selection does not depend upon the role, I would say. The subject matter expertise. If your automation example, not every project has an automation engineer and the manual tester and the developers. Some project have automation engineer plus developers. So automation engineers, they have to do both manual testing as well as kind of a hybrid role, I would say. Some, they have only manual testers, so they do all the sort of testing, and we have one center of excellence where the automation team members are there. So anyone who knows the product end to end, and they sit with the product team and understand what test cases are really important, those members can sit. It can be either the PM or it can be as an automation engineer or the manual. Subject matter expertise. I put it in that way. Subject matter expertise are important for selecting a test cases.
Right. So the next one is from Ashwin, and the question is: as a test lead, I want to create mobile app automation framework and integrate it with CI. What could be the tools and processes for automation and CI runs in pipeline?
Currently APM is in the market and there are other tools too, but I feel that APM is doing a little bit better, and they have more sort of, the open source packages that you can integrate, and the kind of a stability. It's been a long run for APM. So I would say, well, if you ask me, I go with APM, but again, do your diligence. Like it may or may not fit for your project. Some, they need a different sort of tools. So just go with the pros and cons. As I said, just remember my slides, pros and cons. What my experience may or may not suit your experience, because you work in different organization and your use cases are different than what I work and my use cases. So always do your sense over there, and it will definitely help. Yeah.
Right. And the next one is from Brandon. It's similar. So the question is, in the process, is there any difference when planning automation for mobile applications?
I don't think there is a different type of process here, but only the infrastructure change, because you can start your VMs and then start the testing on different browsers, and it's easy. But for mobile, when it comes to mobile, you need to set up some sort of WebDriver agents and other things come into the picture, and people are interested to run on the real devices rather than emulator and the simulator. So that gives more advances. So the little bit of framework level difference and the technology, but I don't think so in process wise you find major difference. It's just the same process but different technology.
Right. So we have an interesting question. I think it's coming up more often nowadays, from Nikhil Jadhav. The question is, can AI be used in test automation? Does AI affect job in the future? And And codeless automation tools, can they affect automation job?
Well, good question. It's a big, I would say, see, any technologies that you come up have its own, pros and cons. There's nothing like, okay, this technology come in, so I don't need something. It's not like that. So it depends upon how effective the technology that affecting your position. That makes sense. Earlier we were walking, and slowly it starts with the bicycle, and then slowly it with the two-wheeler, four-wheeler, but still people need the cycle now for their exercises. So it's up to the team. So AI, definitely it may have some impact, but that impact may not be like what would I say? It depends upon there's no concrete answer. From my experience, it helps to expedite certain things. But apart from that, I don't see a major impact that you may lose the job. I don't comment on anything on that. The second question, I have follow-up question, is the codeless automation. Again, now see how AI is emerging, the codeless automation. You understand how it is effectively being implemented, whether it's sufficient or not. So again, that's another level. So honestly, I don't have any concrete answer, but to my experience to this second, it actually helps to accelerate certain things. So you need to focus on that perspective. So everything have good and bad on the sides, two faces. So let's talk about optimistic approach and look into that way. That's my suggestion, and the same suggestion goes to me too.
Yeah, I think my 2 cents to that question would be, maybe writing the automation part, writing the actual code part, that may be replaced by AI. But the system understanding, right? Automation, like QAs, have a huge understanding of the entire system. That cannot be replaced. Thinking of business logic, what to test, what scenarios can break the system. I don't think we are anywhere close to AI replacing that kind of thinking, right? So that is safe. So thinking about the scenarios that can break the system, that's the real job of any QA guy, right? And that is not going away.
Yeah. And I can correlate this with the simple example that what we have right now. We have ChatGPT, and it's like 4 versions come into the picture, and we have Google also. So how many members using ChatGPT versus how many members using Google? Still, we use both. At least I use both. So it's not like ChatGPT came into the picture, I don't need a Google, and vice versa. So there might be other tools that I can use. So it's up to what you do, and I'll see that in that way, basically. Yes.
Okay, so the next one is from Neetu. The question is, what are your thoughts on creating detailed manual test cases before getting into automation? Should the team skip writing detailed test cases and instead spend time on automating them?
I would say yes, and I would say no. I'll give a simple example is, if you are able to convince your stakeholders that without writing any manual test cases, my output of your automation script actually makes you to understand what this test case is all about, then I would say yes, you can skip. And the other part of no is, always remember this, not everything can be automated. There are certain things that you cannot automate. You still need to document somewhere, so you cannot avoid manually documenting. It depends upon how effectively you want to approach. Some organization, they need both automation as well as both manual testing test cases as well as the automation scripts. Some, they want only the automation script to avoid spending time on manual test cases. But again, as long as you are understanding what that test case is all about in your report, you decide what is needed.
Got it. We have a question from Martin. If you have your REST API automation suite as component, is it okay to reuse it for a new end-to-end automation, or just think it as a new one to integrate it?
I would just reuse it, because automation is how effectively, that's one of the reason I said automation is not just the framework that you are taking and putting in there and all of the do's. So it has to, you have to think in broader perspective. You need to bring everything into the picture, as long as you are getting benefit from it. If you think that reusing the REST APIs makes your script faster, have a separate packages in your automation project and make sure that you are trying to call that packages. So it's like one package or one change that is applicable for testing the REST API as well as reusing that API in the automation. For example, registration. For example, registering this BrowserStack webinar. If you have an API to register, and if there is any changes in the API, all you have to do is you need to change that API in one space, and that API changes will be reflected in everywhere rather than just doing it in multiple way. And of course, you sometimes for automation, you need to have a custom APIs also developed. So I would say just if that is the case, just go with the custom API development also. It's not like only, but I'm saying also. So it depends upon the project and the complexity of the scenario that you are dealing with and how effectively you are constructing. So these comes under automation framework development and the review process. So you have to go back and forth with the development team to understand what the components that you can reuse from the development team to your automation. So it is like a team. Just think automation is not separate. It's a team effort.
Right. So there's a question from Jaspreet. Is there a way to integrate test observability even if it's an API automation framework? Yes. Yes, Jaspreet, it's possible. API tests, unit tests, functional tests, any kind of automation tests, you can use test observability with that, right? The next one is from Tommy. Is this webinar available to review somewhere? Yes. We will share the recordings of the webinar with all of the attendees, and feel free to reshare it to anyone you like, right? We have one question from Ebenezer. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but what is the difference between test plan and test strategy? We don't really like to take that.
Oh yeah, so as I think this is kind of a repeated question. So test strategy, always think like the high level standard technology, I mean standard in the STLC lifecycle, software testing lifecycle. Test plan is within your project, how effectively you are utilizing the guidelines from the test strategy and how you go further. So think in that way. So it's like a blueprint. Again, it's a big blueprint, and this test plan is like a guidelines, a small blueprint. So that's all it does actually. This is an overall high level detail. The parameters varies from test plan to test strategy. I strongly recommend to go through some documents to understand which parameter fits in your company based on your needs.
Right. I think there's a question from Ramya. How do I see the consolidated test case execution report? I mean, how many passed and failed count to that particular browser? And I believe this is a question for observability because it was asked during that time. So Ramya, I think it is possible. It is very much possible with test observability to see a consolidated report. You can consolidate not just one run, you can actually merge multiple runs also. If you're doing reruns, you can actually merge all of that and get one consolidated report. And we have a plethora of filters. So if you want to see a report for only Chrome 116, you can see that. And you can do any kind of dissection of the report. So yes, that's possible with test observability, right? Okay. Santosh has a question. Difference between TDD and BD, TDD and KDD and BDD framework.
Right.
Let's take that.
Yeah. So to the persons who are not aware of this, the acronyms. So TDD is test-driven development, and I think KDD is knowledge discovery in database. I think it's related to the data mining and the data processing. And the other part, what is that other part? BDD, behavior-driven development. So mostly TDD comes in, if I remember correctly, it is in the development page, shift left, where they write the unit test cases first and makes it fail, makes it red. Basically, they call it as a red and make it red and get it green. So they understand from the testing perspective first before they actually develop. So that they know what are the cases they have to cover in the TDD. BDD is a behavior-driven development where everybody can contribute, including your PMs and your subject matter expertise, and they also involved in developing some sort of the use cases. I'm not aware much on the KDD because data processing side I was not involved. However, it is related to data mining and data processing and data transformations, some short. So honestly, I don't have much idea on KDD, but BDD and TDD, yes.
Right.
I believe it comes in clustering and other things, if I remember, when it comes to the data processing. Yes.
So this is a interesting question from Todd. Vinod, you may take it. Do you have any course recommendations regarding building automation framework from scratch? Any particular online course that has helped you? Because I haven't found any course. Just barely everyone is touching barely the surface, right? Do we have anything, or we? Yeah.
Well, I would just, go to Udemy and LinkedIn courses to see whether there's any automation building from the scratch. But again, all these are based on my experience, right? I didn't learn any courses over there. It's all through your experience, the hands-on experience, basically. I have, fortunately, I got a good hands-on experience in developing a framework, starting from the scratch. That is start of my career. So that helps me a lot. Again, it depends upon what, see, again, automation framework is a generic term, right? So you need to know what automation framework you're talking about. You're talking about Playwright. If there is a Playwright, then Playwright is one of the tools. If you talk about Selenium, Selenium is one of the tools that you still have it. I feel that the Playwright, Selenium, and all sort of even including the SQL, everything is there in the Udemy and LinkedIn courses. But honestly, I haven't gone through any courses. It's through my experience. But yeah, if you really want to learn the course, I would say any course related websites or Google. I think Google is the best place.
Right. I think we have a few more questions, but we're already 20 minutes over time. I think we'll end it here. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and we will send answers back to each and every one of you who have asked a question. So thank you so much for attending. And I think, yes, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity, BrowserStack again. I appreciate it. Thank you.